So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we have to start with the GST, and give me 5 ways to fix the economy. Increasing taxes, and let me see, what's the other one we could do? Oh, right, increase immigration. That's the only solution these people have. How could we raise more money to pay for refugees that we want to import? Raise taxes, and what else are we gonna do? Increase immigration. But for real, that's what they're doing. Dave says last week, my absent NDP MP for Edmonton Griesbach, sorry if I'm getting that wrong, Blake D, did a radio interview where he suggested that doubling your GST would somehow put money back in people's pockets. Here's the 11 seconds. Let's just double your taxes. How is that? Is that a solution that you want to hear more about? Right, here we go.
More money. Those supports were things like pharmacare, were things like dental care, union protection programs like anti-scab legislation, doubling GST to get more money back in people's pockets. More money.
Yes, let's steal double the money that we've been stealing. That'll put money more in people's pockets. What? And the NDP, I don't even think they realize how dumb they sound, right? Javier is pointing this out. He says, Mario D's report on European competitiveness. The key message on energy states the very often ignored obvious: high energy costs in Europe are an obstacle to growth. One of the things that is afflicting Canada currently is our production is cratering. Like, the US is almost double as productive as we are in Canada. And so that's not good. Part of the reason for that is we're taxing inputs. We can't be competitive because the United States doesn't have that restriction on the inputs, right? If the United States put that restriction on the inputs, then we might be competitive with them again. But at this point, we're half as productive. So we can't, and it's because of the carbon taxes. It's because of the bad policies that Justin Trudeau is doing and that the EU is doing as well. And so fundamentally, and the carbon tax is the vehicle they're doing it with here. In the EU, they're doing it with different things, including the Russian war, to be honest, because up until not too long ago, they were getting a lot of gas from Russia to make sure energy prices stayed quote unquote stable. And now, I mean, that's off the table, right? And it seems like they want the energy prices to be as off the hook and crazy as possible. Look at where Keir Starmer's doing, right? And so it's very interesting to me that all of these policies, they say, are meant to make us richer, put money back in your pockets, right? We'll just double the taxes and put money back in your pockets. But the reality of these situations, the carbon tax, creates a situation where we're not productive, we are lagging behind, we're not competitive, and it's negative and it's bad. And fundamentally, it's a negative outcome for Canadians when it's a bad policy, and we should respond as if it's a bad policy. But instead, these people are celebrating wins because our productivity is down, but that also brings our carbon whatever down. And so, oh yay, time for celebration, right? And it's an inverted win. It's a loss, really, because we are becoming a place with a low quality of life or low standard of living. And that's like, unringing that bell is going to be difficult. It's going to be very difficult because people say, what about the poor people? Guelph is wanting to come up with rent controls. And like, didn't Venezuela, or not Venezuela, it was Javier Milei or the other guy, one of those guys was fixing all of the terrible socialist crap that's been put in place in these places that have tried to break out of this. And one of the first things they did was get rid of the rent control. And now Guelph's saying, we need rent control. Bull poop. It's unbelievable stuff that's going on. And we fall for it. We fall for it because, not that we don't know any better, but we trust our politicians. And I mean, we should know better than that, right? CBC watcher, let's talk about the election. Now, I am a firm believer that that the politics happen, like, Quebec isn't a place unto itself. Politics happens all across Canada. And so the Liberals destroying the country seems obvious all across the country, even in Quebec, right? And if the Liberals, if the electorate in Quebec wanted to punish the Liberals, do you think they'd go with a party that was supporting the Liberals the whole time? The way that these parties are getting support in Quebec is very suspect to me. It seems weird. Here's how it's breaking down. Quebec riding of La Salle, Imande, Verdun. This is for the September 16th by-election. In a recent poll, Main Street Research put the Bloc in the lead with 32%, followed by the Liberals with 23% and the NDP with 19%. All of these parties are small. Like the Liberal, almost 50% of the electorate wants the Liberal NDP, and 32% want the Bloc, and the Conservatives aren't even in this race at all. Are our elections completely rigged, top to bottom? Is this what the people in Quebec want, the Liberal NDPs? And to punish the Liberal NDPs by going with the Bloc, who's saying, now that the Liberal NDP coalition is done, we might join that coalition to punish the Liberals. They're going to vote for the Bloc, who's going to prop up the Liberals. Really? It seems unlikely to me. Seems really, really... Something must change, says the National Post headline. Liberals are under siege in Montreal days before by-election by people who want to vote for a party that's going to prop them up. So it just doesn't make any sense to me. Seems bonkers. Seems really, really crazy. Seems like our elections aren't in our control. PPC is not in that mix at all. CPC is not in that mix at all. Weird, right? Weird, very strange. Mr. Surveillance, and I've got even more strange things coming out of that to show you, and then consider the numbers as well. Mr. Surveillance says, just how toxic has Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party become? With no effort, the separatist Bloc Québécois is leading the Liberals by 10 points in the strongest of Liberal strongholds for the upcoming by-election in LaSalle, Imond, Verdun. Dead. So, again, I feel like this is a switchover. How can the NDP be polling 19% when they're putting stuff like this out? Here's Michael Barrett, who's an MP, and he says, when did the NDP stop using the Canadian flag on their flyers and switch to the Palestinian flag? And who in the NDP approved this change? Great question. And then, and it's funny because Greg comes out swinging. He says, he shows a picture of Andrew Scheer and a couple of other MPs that says Canada's Conservatives will always stand with Israel. We will recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And there's Andrew Scheer wearing Israel blue in his t-shirt and flying the Israeli flag in the background. And so, like, same, right? Is that why the Liberals, or the Conservatives are not polling well in Quebec? But I don't understand. If people are bleeding for Palestine and bleeding for Israel, why would anybody in Canada vote for them, right? So that's rich coming from these guys, right? It's rich coming from all of the assets of the CPC, who are all aligned in their stance on Israel, and they want to send more money to Zelensky as well. And so, like, I really don't feel like the Conservative Party represents all that much of a change, but particularly this riding seems very fishy to me. There are things happening that seem out of the ordinary if the electorate wanted to punish the Liberals. Going with the Bloc doesn't seem like it's doing that. Here's Justin Trudeau, and we're going to talk about crime to a degree here. And he says, we're cracking down on auto theft in Canada. We'll play the first minute of this. This is Cy-Jan. Here we go.
That auto theft is on the rise. Now, as a former police officer, I know how complex these crimes can be.
Police have arrested the suspects in what they're calling a, quote, prolific auto theft group.
Nationally in Ontario,
there was one day in York region where 37 cars were stolen in one night.
Auto theft isn't just about stealing cars. It's tied to organized crime, violence, and money laundering. And that's why we're taking concrete action. We recently purchased and deployed a new X-ray scanner to detect stolen vehicles at our borders. We've introduced a national action plan on combating auto theft, which includes legislative changes, tougher penalties, enhanced intelligence, and leveraging cutting-edge technologies. Now, it doesn't stop there. We've invested millions to support local police officers and the Canada Border Services Agency. Now, already we've intercepted over 1,300 stolen vehicles just this year.
We have a detailed action plan, specific things we can do to make sure that police forces are working together with the...
They put together this whole big action plan after releasing the people on bail over and over again, violent criminals, people who have illegal weapons from the United States, on bail, people who've been caught doing crime on bail. There are people who are on bail who have committed murder, and still nothing. And now they say we're fixing it with all this technology and this and that. And we're supposed to believe this while at the same time doing... Here's Mark, and he's a Toronto Star columnist, and he shares this. He says, here's how my column begins. I can't separate Canada's car theft mayhem from the never-ending court case against trucker convoy sympathizers Tamara Litch and Chris Barber. Our criminal justice system appears unable to deal with increasingly violent armed gangs, but it has had both time and budget to spend 38 days in court and counting on a trial involving bouncy castles and truck horns. That's 38 more days than police and the Canada Border Agency have spent looking for your stolen car as it sits in a container at Montreal's Federal Port Authority before being shipped to its new owner in Africa or Eastern Europe. You might not have supported the convoy's tactics, but armed truckers didn't break into homes in Ottawa's Rodcliffe neighborhood looking to overthrow the government. Right. And so it's very interesting that the government has resources to go after Tamara Lich. And all of a sudden, because people blame these people, the Liberals, for this crime wave, now they've got all this technology and all this money, et cetera, et cetera. They created the circumstances by letting dangerous criminals, one, into the country unvetted, and two, out of jail. They created this. They did this. With bad policies, they did this. And I don't trust them to fix it. And now they're saying, oh, we've got technology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I still don't trust them to fix it. I think it's going to be a boondoggle for the next little while anyway. I know somebody who got their car stolen. They were at a show. They went to their retail thing, and they went to a show to, sell their wares and things like that. And while they were in the show, their car got stolen from the parking lot. And so, like, you think there's a theft ring operating in parking lots in Toronto. You know what I mean? So holy smokeronis, it seems like the deck is stacked against Canadians, no matter which way you slice it. Moving on, the other day, Justin Trudeau was at the Toronto International Film Festival with somebody on his arm, or maybe it was just a picture. I don't know. I was joking and I said, "Is this a date?" And then other people took notice as well, and they did a little deep dive on who that person was. So M. Brandt says, "Who is Sarbjeet Kaur?" And Sarbjeet Kaur here says, "It's okay to punch a Nazi," and then she's hashtags her own last name, which is, weird, right? Like that's weird. So it's okay to punch a Nazi. That's one thing that defines this woman. And M. Brandt says, Sarbjeet is the founder of KPW Communications. She left Argyle PR Group. Argyle Group subcontracts to KPW, allowing the federal government to legitimately run smear campaigns against the opposition. Here's one of the contracts to Argyle, which was subbed out to KPW. Here's the fake social media post. So here's on the left is the $79,000 August 18th, 2023 contract, and it was for Transport Canada, and it says the contract is a call up against Public Service and Procurement Canada tool, dialogue, form facilitator, and report writing. And then here is the fake tweet that was put out because of it. It says, Sarbjeet Kaur says, must share. Friend's sister woke up in a panic, realizing her child's passport was expired, and we're leaving on a trip tomorrow morning. Service Canada's staff worked today to solve the problem. It's a holiday miracle, and we're all marveling at our federal public service. That's okay. My sister woke me up at 8 a.m. crying because her kid's passport is expired. We sorted it out. Oh, wow. So fake. Absolutely fake, right? And further, the government of Canada paid for this post. So here is, it's okay to punch a Nazi. We just looked at that. So pretty interesting. And she gets access to the prime minister, or, who knows? Was that a paid for situation? Did Argyle subcontract that date out? +1, whatever it is. No, I don't know. I really don't know. Questions abound and answers. No, we don't do answers in Canada. Sorry. Naya says, India signs a deal with United Arab Emirates to supply 100 million tons of LNG each year. Oh, shucks. It could have been us, but instead, right? Like, nope, no jobs for us. More jobs for India, right? Oh, well. What are you going to do when the government seems intent on shutting down your energy sector? You should probably change the government as fast as possible, right? Mocha is responding to this. Yesterday, I showed you the Nager curtain. And Nager curtain, I'm sorry, I'm probably saying it terribly wrong. And there was a whole very aggressive sword thing during that parade. And apparently they had the Abbey Police Department leading the Nager curtains procession. So they had the police at the front of the procession, while behind the procession they were waiting with their swords and axes. Right? And Mocha says, Abbotsford's chief constable deleted his tweet after I pointed out that The Negra Curtain event, which his department was proud to lead, contained graphic glorifications of violence. I understand that law enforcement aims to build strong relationships with all communities in Canada, including the Sikh community. Participating in community events seems to be one way of achieving this goal. However, what happens when the organizers of these events, such as Gurdwara leadership, allow the glorification of violence and the involvement of individuals associated with terrorist organizations? How can law enforcement foster good relationships with a community when its leadership does not distance itself from actions that broader Canadian public finds abhorrent? By distancing themselves from such events, police departments avoid being associated with these problematic elements, but risk losing the opportunity to build trust and maintain positive relationships with the community. Should government institutions refrain from participating in any religious or political events altogether, or should they only engage in those where the glorification of violence and other unacceptable behaviors are absent? See, when you say other unacceptable behaviors, you open it up to the interpretation of people, and then somebody's point of view may disagree with yours or my point of view, and then other unacceptable behaviors, what are they? You know what I mean, right? Like wearing a hijab or a burqa, the whole head covering, the whole deal. Is that an unacceptable behavior? Or is that acceptable now, right? Like so on and so on and so on. What's unacceptable, right? Educating women, is that unacceptable now? Is that an unacceptable behavior, right? Like where are we going with this? And so when you put these things into positions, like when you put it out there like that, where it's muddy and unclear, then you can leave it up to interpretation and people can pervert it to a point where it doesn't represent anything that you want, right? And so, like, scary. Does the responsibility to set this example fall on the police, or should it be on elected officials, especially Sikh leaders like Calgary Mayor Jyoti Gondik, who also participates in such events, to set that standard? Will Canadian voters distance themselves from elected officials who don't distance themselves from organizations that don't distance themselves from such acts? That's too many steps, Mocha. Too many steps. But I get the overall thrust of it. The unfortunate thing is, Canadians and our elections, I don't think are representative of what Canadians want. Canadians go to the polls and then they find out what whoever won or whatever it is, and nobody's ever satisfied because it doesn't actually represent what the public wants, right? Because I think our elections are rigged. And so it almost doesn't matter what people vote for, because I mean, even Brian Mulroney was talking about how, and Pierre Poilievre, decades-long consensus, handing back and forth this government that moving towards this whole, I don't know, NWO utopia nonsense. But they talk about passing the policies back and forth, liberal and conservative, and so on and so forth, and working together. And that's not how democracy is supposed to work. When you kick somebody out, you're not supposed to get somebody else, a different person with different rhetoric, who does exactly the same policies, right? You're supposed to get different policies. You're supposed to be able to change the direction of your country if you want to. And when we're being invaded, we should be able to stop that. And like, look at what's happened in England. They can't stop it. Keir Starmer's not going to stop it. He's going to throw you in jail if you ask him to stop it. Holly Doan says more Canadians now play soccer than hockey, according to the Department of Canadian Heritage Research. I mean, I'm skeptical about the Canadian Department of Heritage, because those people are rampant ideologues who hate Canada and they're trying to import the Middle East. So like whatever they produce, I'm suspect of, because I don't know that they've actually interviewed people who play hockey. Anyway, one of the potential reasons for this, if this is true, is that there's less competition in soccer and it's cheaper, right? It's very accessible. Whereas, and you can have, like, you don't need ice time. So you can have, if you have 100 teams, you can have 100 teams because you have parks. And like for a lot of the how soccer works is like the little guys, they don't play on an entire big pitch. They play on a smaller pitch, and the pitch is like staked out on a field. So you can have 20 pitches on one soccer field, right? Easy, no problem. And all these kids can play. So like ice time doesn't work like that. Max games you can have on ice too, right? You've got one game in the one end zone in the one zone and one game in the other zone. So you can double up a little bit, but you've got terminal velocity of limitations because the ice time is difficult to get, right? Or limited in a way that soccer pitches aren't. So anyway, regardless of all of that, I think that it's an interesting thing to note, and it's expense and access, right? And the Canadian government couldn't be more excited about it. Here is more pipe and water restrictions in Calgary. It says Calgary water plant issues spark need to keep water use down. So they're really trying to like force people to keep the water use down. The rhetoric they're using is very, very strong, right? They don't want people to use it. Calgarians got closer to the city's target for water use on Saturday, but officials are emphasizing the need to keep water use at safe levels due to a couple of issues over the weekend. According to data from the city's water use dashboard, 496 million liters was used on Saturday, down from 502 million liters on Friday. Officials increased the target from 450 million liters to 485 million liters after crews tested a new configuration that let 35 million more liters safely move through the system. This whole thing reeks of COVID numbers, of, oh, we can do this, but not that. Oh, it's not safe to do that, blah, 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 blah. And I am skeptical as all get out. I would want to fire every single, I don't trust these people. Like, I just fundamentally don't trust that they're doing what they need to be doing. I would trust, like, get 10 guys off an oil rig, get somebody who's got a crew who knows what they're damn well doing, and get the pipe fixed. Because it seems like the people who they're putting in that hole don't know what they're doing, don't know their bum from their elbow, right? So it is an absolute, it's offensive. It is, if I lived in Calgary, this is the number one issue. Jody Gondik's off to what, Norway? Like, the problems that have happened this summer and the callous nature with which the politicians at every level have regarded their constituents and citizens is terrible. And they seem to not care. And that's another reason why I think our elections are rigged. This seems like a negotiation, right? We want you to use 450 million liters, but you keep using close to 500 million liters. So we're going to up it to 500 million liters, or we're going to up it to really close to that. And then we're going to wind you down from that level, right? Oh, we're going to return to normal soon. I don't think they have any intention of returning to normal. As soon as this pipe's fixed, they're going to have another pipe that's broken. And they're going to say, listen, we just have to do it for a little bit longer. And it's nonsense. And like, they should have a countdown where city council says, if it's not fixed by this date, then like your crew gets fired from your city job because you are crap at your job, and we're going to bring in an outside crew and we're going to get this damn thing fixed. And then we're going to rehire all of the people we need for your jobs with competent people and not do DEI hires. Like, honestly. So these problems have a solution. We're just refusing to do the solution. And that's a problem. Like, that's not good. Jim is responding to this. This is a fruit ring, like a wreath of fruit. There's 2 pineapples in the wreath, 3 pineapples in the wreath, which is a lot of pineapples. There's actually like, oh, okay, the pineapple's orientation is the other way. And so there's the fruit wreath, and it says, everyone loves a little something fruity, queer is here. And that's from BCTF Kids Matter Teachers Corps, or Kids Mother Teachers Corps, Kids something Teachers Corps. And the queer use, if you listen to James Lindsay at all, queer is one of those words that they try and hide under LGBT and whatever. So it's interesting that the use of queer is right on the poster there. But queer is communist through and through. So using that is a telltale sign that we're dealing with crazy communists. This is not about being inclusive or anything like that. Queer is exclusive anyway. Like, it excludes all straight people. Moving on, let's talk about free speech. Ryan says, Liberal Prime Minister, May 3rd, 2024, journalists must be able to do their jobs free from threat or intimidation. Liberal MP, September 7th, 2024, attacking a journalist who dared to criticize the Liberals. Your paper wouldn't be in business were it not for the subsidies of our government. And so this is Talib. And people are realizing this and pushing back. And I still don't think the Liberals realize that they stepped in it, right? Joe Warmington is responding to Talib as well. He says, I don't work for you or answer to you. You work for us and you answer to us. And so that's interesting too. But again, we don't behave that way. Like, as constituents, we don't demand anything from our MPs other than that they lie to us in ways that we find acceptable. And that's it. We don't demand answers. Not from our mayors, not from our school board trustees, not from our MPPs in Ontario or CMAs or representatives at the provincial level across the country, not from the MPs and not from the Prime Minister. Not a single person answers to Canadian taxpayers, not one. And that's, I mean, very, very concerning, right? Like, I'm very concerned about that. Why is that true? Because if you try and get answers from these people, they will block you. I'm blocked by the Guelph police. I'm blocked by the city of Guelph because I try and get answers out of those people and they don't like that. I'm blocked by all sorts of people, not MPs. I'm blocked by Ezra Levent. Some MPs I'm blocked by. Some other city councillors. I've had people talking to city councillors in other cities and other mayors in other cities, and I'm blocked by those people, which is kind of funny. I'm blocked by a lot of NDP MPs. I'm blocked by a lot of CPC MPs too, because I demand that they actually be conservative, and when they support liberal ideals, and I point that out, they get upset and they block me. Michelle Rempel blocked me years ago, 2018. I think she blocked me. So all of that says they don't answer to us. They block us. They say we need to come up with a censorship bill to stop people from bothering us online because we're really upset that they can bother us so easily online. We'd really like to use that as a one-way communication tool and not hear from anybody to tell us that our interpretation of reality is wrong, right? Like, that's what they do, right? So it's pretty wild. Accountability is not our strong suit. Michael Barrett says, ever wonder why some in media don't criticize obvious failures by the Liberals? Trudeau's number 2 MP responsible for giving cash to media has a temper tantrum when an employee at the Post dares to call out Liberals for breaking Canada's immigration system. It's hush money. Yeah, be quiet about that because we tell you to be quiet about it, right? And as soon as the deal changes to be editorially impactful, then the deal's null, right? And I mean, here's the deal is editorially impactful, as if you didn't know, right? So it should be null, but they're still paying. Let's talk about health. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful